Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us so late in the afternoon. We're excited to have you today. My name is Abby Fogerty, and forward-looking statements. If we do say anything in this session that is about statements about the product in the future, this slide just lets us know that those may or may not come to fruition. So welcome to Creating Synergies in Venue Sourcing. We are going to have a panel of experts up here with us today, and then we will have a workshop at the end of the session. So keep a hold of those little yellow cards in your hand. We will get to those towards the second half of the session. I am Abby Fogerty, as I mentioned. I have about 15 years of experience in the meetings and events industry. I am currently on our venue sourcing team on client success, supporting enterprise clients who are sourcing through Cvent, sending RFPs over to the hotel side. So today we're going to start off, I'm going to introduce you to what we call our ecosystem, and it creates a network effect. If anyone isn't familiar with that, we'll kind of clarify what that means. And then we're going to hear from our experts. We have a great panel of both hotels and planners with us today to talk about how we can work better together as we are sourcing for hotels and those hotels are responding. And then finally, we're going to have a really engaging workshop with our partners at Stray Boots. So at Cvent, we have what we call two clouds. There's the event cloud, or the planner side of Cvent, and then there's the hospitality cloud, or those hotels and venues that are in CVBs that are receiving the RFPs that come from the planners. And this is kind of a wheel effect that is created. The more planners we have sending RFPs to more hotels on the other side, the more valuable the network that we've created, and it really starts to kind of create this flywheel effect. So this is a phenomenon, as you can see on the screen, whereby a product or service gains additional value as more people use it. It's the classic network effect. So that's what we've created for you at Cvent on the RFP side as you're sending RFPs through Cvent, and then on the hotel side, sending those proposals back through. So let's hear from our panel of experts on how we can work better together in this network effect. So we'll go ahead and introduce all of our panelists. We have Melanie Degrow. Melanie is with American Express. We have Cindy Jones, who is with, ooh, she's got a fan base up here in the front.
If you're nervous, bring your own support, man.
Okay, there you go. So I guess I need my support to come up here, please. Cindy is Vice President of Hospitality and Sales with Live Casino and Hotels. And then we have Alyssa Petty, Director of Sales and Strategy Groups with IHG. And
thank you.
More fan group. And then we have Mary Trent, Global Travel Category Manager with Meetings and Events at Chevron.
All right.
All right, we're going to have a contest later. Well, I'll go ahead and sit down and just start to ask our panel some questions here. We have, as we're talking about the network effect and working better together, can you tell us a little bit, Alyssa, I'm going to go ahead and start with you, and can you tell us a little bit about how that network really helps you in relationships? This is such a relationship industry. How do we kind of keep that while we're working through a tool like Cvent?
Absolutely. I think the really important thing about Cvent is that it's that starting connection point for these relationships that are so important to us. I'm with IHG. I was on property with hotels previously, and the value in Cvent was really knowing who the right planners were that were sourcing either in our hotel or in our market. And Cvent can't create that relationship for you, but it is the starting point for you to build that relationship and to get to know those planners, and for the planners to get to know the hotels and figure out who can accommodate their programs and who you like working with and who can help you achieve your clients' goals as well.
How about from the hotel or the planner side? Is there anyone who kind of has maybe a good story that you could tell that, when was a good relationship formed that you were able to work with a hotel maybe over and over again?
You want to go first?
Sure. Well, like with the network effect, I know this is a fun industry, and later we'll go get espresso martinis with IHG after this, but there's the not fun part of, the paperwork side and the sourcing side and the contract, all the stuff that's not the, the sexy side of everything, and Cvent kind of helps facilitate that. So it connects you, but it also helps you, manage that workload. So it's not an example of when I've used one over and over, sorry, but it's along the same lines of it starts the connection, and it's a way for you to keep track of everything and keep on top of it and know who you should be talking with.
Right. Hello? Okay, hi. The other thing that we also talked about was keeping all the conversations within that RFP, because when you go outside the email, then conversations are lost. If you win the lottery, your team doesn't know what's going on with it, and then they have to backtrack with the hotel. The other thing, too, I was thinking about when you work with your global sales people, they keep it all together for you. I mean, recently, my company's going through a reorganization, so there's a lot of folks that are in travel that won't be a part of the team any longer. So I'm really going to rely on my global sales team to really work with those regional directors, so they're not just visiting anybody at the offices out in London, because there's really no one that they need to be visiting. So that network effect or phenomenon is just really important to me as things change within my organization.
I think one thing that Alyssa touched on is the paperwork, and that the litigious part about that. When using Cvent, that streamlines that, so the conversations that you are having are more valuable and can actually create that collaboration between the meeting planner and the sales and the hotel.
Yeah.
So that you're not having to worry about the paperwork, because that's already streamlined for both sides.
Yeah.
So really kind of starting that relationship by connecting through Cvent and then continuing that on through those offline
Correct.
conversations that you have down the line.
Cvent is a great tool for that, but we still need to make sure we're taking that extra step to build that relationship. It's not just a number on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
It's a relationship that we have to continue to nurture.
Yeah. So not to pivot too hard, but I do want to talk a little bit about the seller's market. Something that Melanie and I have talked about in the past is how, we kind of feel like sometimes we're in a seller's market, but we did a GBTA study where we surveyed some planners and some hoteliers and said, who has the upper hand right now? And what came back across all of them is it's kind of a balanced market right now. We're seeing more of a seller's market in those major cities, and then more of a buyer's market in those tier 2 cities. So, Melly, I wonder if you could tell us a little about what you guys are seeing at American Express.
Yeah, we're seeing the same thing. If you want to go to Nashville, you're going to have to book really far out and not get the concessions you would get if you maybe went to Tucson. And that's okay. If there's flexibility with location, that will really help you out, and you can find a location for your meeting within your budget. And the tier 1 cities that were tier 1 cities pre-COVID aren't quite there yet, right? We can still get some good value in San Francisco and other cities that in the past you couldn't. So you may have to look a little bit or understand what's going on in those markets or new hotels that are coming up. But if you have flexibility, if you have a budget you have to stick to, the flexibility helps for destination.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are you seeing that across the board on the hotel side as well?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that as well, sort of a little bit of a different perspective. But we, a lot of times, will get requests from our clients or from the planners to say, like, oh, we're really under a lot of pressure with our budget, or our client is really cost conscious because it's really expensive to XYZ, right? Like all those pressures, economic pressures. But our hotels are under those pressures as well, right? The cost of labor is still going up. The cost of the toilet paper that we have to bring into the building is going up as well. So it brings me back to that idea of flexibility, like Melanie said. We've got to find that really happy medium. I don't know if anyone in the room feels differently. I'd be really hard pressed to say this is a buyer or a seller's market. I think we're all just kind of trying to do the best that we can with the information and the sort of leeway that we have.
Yeah, the pressures are pretty immense. The meeting planners are being told to do more, be more exciting, but spend less. And then you have the hotels that are, you must grow revenue, you must grow profitability because everything is costing more. Yeah. The flank steak that everyone has on their banquet, costs 20 to 30% more. And the tariffs aren't helping things either. Yeah. So when dealing with that, you do have to ask the questions, are you flexible? And it may not just be, location. It could be day of week. You could slide one day and save $100K. Yeah. But you have to have those conversations.
And there's that opportunity in the RFP to include that as well, where
Correct.
you have either let them send additional dates, or you have additional dates in there that you can include that are potential dates that you would be willing to move to. And I think that's a really great point, that the reason that we added that into the new experience is so that you can say, these are a couple of dates that are available to me, or come back to me and tell me what works.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, and Cvent already has hot dates set up. So if the hotels are managing their hot dates and even their seasonality, meeting planners can source through those that are running promotions or running hot dates for that time. Yeah. So there are already tools there when you're sourcing. that I don't know if we always leverage as well as we should.
And this goes back to the network effect that you were talking about. So yes, it's very transactional, right? I send you an RFP, you use AI to fill it out and you respond. But if you have a citywide, or if you can't take it, but another partner of yours in a different city can take it, tell us that as planners. Make our job easier. Because if I have to go and resource that RFP and start from zero, it's really helpful if you as a hotelier has said, look, I can't take it, but a resort partner of ours across the country can, or in this area can, or there's a citywide, can you shift to a different week? That opens the conversation from the hotel to the planner and builds the trust and the relationship.
Alyssa, have you had that experience before where you have, kind of come back and said, maybe look at this other city, and because you're able to see kind of higher level across the board on your property?
Yes, we absolutely do that as well, but I think it goes back to the sort of beginning of the conversation. Sorry, I feel like we're all speaking in circles here. But it really is about like flexibility and communication. Our hotels are all trying to put together a puzzle in the best possible way that they can. So if you can be a little bit flexible and shift your puzzle piece from Tuesday, Wednesday to Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, Thursday instead, that might get you the flexibility or the pricing or the concessions that you were looking for. Or if you consider Knoxville or Chattanooga instead of Nashville, you might get what you're looking for and still get that unique experience that your stakeholders have asked you to bring to the event.
Yeah, good point.
The other thing too, as a planner, when you are speaking to your executive team or whoever's having the meeting, think about that flexibility. It might be better to have everybody fly in the day, start the meeting half day, because this other meeting's ending, and so they might be able to fulfill that way, so you'd get better pricing. But it's better when you go into planning with your executive team, like, let me find out what's our best bet before you put it on your calendar. Because a lot of my administrative staff will say, no, it has to be this date. So I'm trying to get them to change how they work with the executive team so you can be more flexible with the meeting plans. Because if you do start that half day or just cut by half a day, you're going to cut that budget for you. And then you can work with the hotel on trying to fit in that particular meeting. Because sometimes the other client is ending half day as well. So then it's good for all. Right?
Yep.
We call it Tetris.
Oh, you do? I like that.
I love that
I like the
Tetris.
game.
We Tetris it all in.
Well, COVID has come up with a couple of you, and I know we kind of, pre-COVID looks very different than post-COVID for many of us, and it really is a new way of planning meetings now after we've had to move to that virtual setting, and now we're all kind of back into person. So I'm wondering how, from a staffing perspective, many of our hotels and our planning teams are a leaner group that we're working with. So I wonder if we can talk a little bit about how has technology stepped in and helped with, from a staffing perspective, to alleviate some of those wearing multiple hats across either the hotels or the planner side. And that can extend obviously beyond Cvent, of course.
I'll start. What I'm looking at right now is simple meetings, and I'm going to call it Simply Meet within my organization. Because we do a lot of catering contracts, and I don't want the sourcing agents to spend their time doing just catering only, because I can rely on the hotels to make sure that they get the right contract. I'm going to open it up to just certain hotels that I do a lot of business with, because then I can trust them to make sure they use the master service agreement, plus making sure that the pre-negotiated concessions are already in there for that catering contract. So that's going to alleviate when our new organization is ready to go, because everyone's going to be ready to plan their meetings after that. So I'm going to be ready for that. So I've got to do some training, and then I'll launch that, and I'll let you know. Maybe next year I'll let you know how it went.
I think people are needing to wear multiple hats, where before maybe you just sourced or you just planned. Now we have people who source and plan, or source and are on site. Everyone kind of has to take a little bit more on. It does make you more marketable, which is good. You have multiple different skills, but we're all doing here more with less. But it's not necessarily more with less. We're just being asked to do more and be more versatile.
And then does that require, on both sides, additional training? Because, that's an area that we haven't really touched
Absolutely.
before.
And a lot of times, it's a lot of trial and error, to be honest. Because, on both sides, people are asked to do things that they haven't done before. Mm-hmm. After COVID, it was, sometimes what was once a team of 25 is now a team of 2.
Yeah.
And, things that, sales leaders used to do 20 years ago when they were coming up, they're now doing it again. And it was a big change curve. Yeah. And then when you start developing those teams again, you realize that the skill sets are different. And even the way you sell now compared to how we sold before COVID is completely different. The collaboration is key now. Those conversations are key now. Now, granted, they're on Zoom or Teams nowadays. There's not a whole lot of site inspections, but you have to have those conversations because you need to gauge what is the skill set of the person who's actually making the decision? And then what is the skill set of the team that's actually going to execute this vision that maybe they're not sure how to articulate? And so it does take a different skill set that we didn't see in 2019.
And are we up-leveling anything from a technology perspective internally that, these are the pieces that we need to be using? I mean, we've heard today in the general session that we've got strides ahead of AI that are just coming very soon around not only creating an RFP for you, but helping you do that search. These are all things that we're all very excited about. The teams have to be kind of ready for those innovations to come through.
Yeah, and I think it's making us, like I said, more versatile. And when we're collaborating and having to learn a job we didn't do before, we can take what we did before to see if we can make it, simplify it, right? What can we cross over, which is what Cvent's doing a lot with the IQ. It's a lot of the stuff that hotels would help out with before, but now it's all in one spot. So that probably came from all these people saying, I can do this tool over here and I can use this over here, but with collaboration, bringing it together.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. We are getting close to where we want to start our workshop, so I do want to ask that Stray Boots get a little bit ready for that. Maybe final thoughts. We had talked about maybe talking about trends, so I'd like for you to maybe start thinking about some of those trends that you are seeing in the market, whether that be starting to get those RFPs and kind of what's contained in those RFPs, or maybe the reach that you have to have from the planner side in order to get the right property and get that contract signed.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
What kind of trends are you seeing right now, and that maybe anything that you're excited about?
I mean, I feel like we've talked about a lot of them already, and there's a lot of exciting stuff that's come out in the last 24 hours that we've been here. I think what's really important for us all to remember is that technology doesn't take the place of human knowledge and human interaction. So trying to figure out how we can use it as part of our sales process, as part of our discovery, or as part of our relationship building, while not letting it take over completely, is that sort of balance that we all need to strike. Because I think there's room on both sides, right? I think in a perfect world, there's really experienced hoteliers and really experienced planners. And as we were just talking about, post-COVID, we've got a lot of new hoteliers, we've got a lot of new planners. So there's an education and relationship building that needs to happen so that you guys are speaking the same language there as well. So I feel like the advice that I always give to our hotels is don't sacrifice quality for speed, right? We want to respond to an RFP quickly. There's a difference between doing something fast and doing something right. And there's a perfect world where we can do both. And it is really your own personal judgment on what that level is for you and for your team.
Our mantra at Chevron is there's always time to do it the right way.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. Trend-wise, we do a lot of the same type of meetings every year. And it seems like when the RFP goes out, I know it. I know them historically, how they roll. And we try to establish new thoughts within those groups. It's difficult, but it may be different next year because we may have new leaders and they may want to see something different. So we'll see. But I don't sit on the marketing team. But the only thing that I see trending is the cost going up. And, I think we're having harder discussions with the salespeople in trying to understand that. I just got off a call oh yeah, by the way, we're going to charge you $10,000 to restore the grass because it's an outdoor lawn. I go, wait, what? When did that happen? Just because I'm doing an amendment? So anyway, it's just always having those conversations and understanding, right? It's an ongoing trend, I think.
Yeah, I think that collaboration piece is certainly something we've talked about a couple of times.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest trend, is we're being forced to collaborate more, to learn new ways. Experiences are very important. The priorities, was always feed them, get them in, get the message, make sure that they have a clean, safe hotel, and that's it. But that's not as important as it used to be. the audiovisual, the production, the experience, the sense of arrival. The experiences, are we building bikes for, Toys for Tots because we're having a December conference? There's lots of different things that are reprioritized, and you have to collaborate with that planner to understand those. And that's not something that is usually illustrated in an RFP.
Yeah. Kind of goes beyond the RFP.
It's absolutely beyond the RFP.
But it kind of like having it start there, and then what we talked about earlier, building on the relationship.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think from our standpoint as a TMC, being more consultative with our clients, having the conversation with them of what are your non-negotiables? Is your date non-negotiable? Is the location? Helping them understand so we aren't, spinning our wheels when we're sourcing. We need to save time for everybody and be a good consultant to them. And then we can take that to collaborate with the suppliers and say, we've had these conversations, here's exactly what they're looking for.
Wonderful. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up and hand things over to Stray Boots?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.